Well, good evening, everybody, even though I'm much later than I should be. By about 5 minutes, 10 minutes across the showtime. Sorry, guys. How are you, everybody doing? My name is Stuart Davis, a flawed man of God. Welcome to my channel. I'm a deacon in a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. Not a pastor, not a biblical scholar, haven't been to seminary. Not trying to get you to join my church or donate it to any special cause. What I'm here to do is talk about God, talk about Jesus, talk about the Holy Spirit, talk about the Bible, talk about Christianity, talk about a wide variety of different topics, issues, and current events, and give you my perspective on them. One that I think is reflective of your average Christian guy. I've been a Christian all my life, 40 years, non denominational Protestant. I don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination. I'm just in the Word daily, trying to do it better each and every day. Sometimes I'll get it right, many times I'll get it wrong, but either way, you'll get an honest reaction from me, an honest opinion from me whenever I'm streaming on here. So, for those of you who may be new to Christianity, maybe just want to learn more about Jesus, maybe trying to figure out what it's all about, and maybe you just have a voice in the back of your mind wondering if there's more to this life than just your existence here on earth. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. Hopefully you can get something very positive about this. Maybe you can get some very good influence and perspective over what it's like to be a Christian, something that you will find is no different than how you are, except for faith in God and obedience to the word and scripture. There's a lot of things that have been misconstrued or intentionally misunderstood about Christianity that's out there in the media. And hopefully this will help put much of that to rest, or put most of that into kind of, and I'm doing a terrible job at this at this intro. I'm just going to scrap it all together. Welcome to the show. We're going to finish up Ezra tonight. I am here to talk to you. If you are new to Christianity, I'm glad to have you here. If you're already a Christian, even better. Look, got a great group of guys that come into the chat each and every night. I want you to be part of that. I want you to be engaging. I want you to be telling me how what we're discussing and talking about affects you. Maybe you have some good insights. Maybe you've got some perspective, something to share with the rest of the group that we can all kind of respond to. This is supposed to be very relaxed, very comfortable. If you don't want to talk, don't talk. But I encourage you to do so because it not only makes the channel better, you'll get more out of it that way. Whenever you bring up your own personal topics, you bring up your own personal experiences, thoughts, and opinions, and you share that and you allow other people to react to it, you end up getting more out of things. Because you might be challenged to rethink it, you might be reinforced on what you already believe. No matter what, other people are going to react to that with their own opinions and experiences, and you end up collecting more information. I love it. I love that part of this show is absolutely amazing. Not quite as great as the Bible, because the Bible is the most awesome thing, but it's definitely up there. And like I said, you make this channel better. The content is better when y'all are chatting. So if you want to be a wallflower, that's great. But you want to get more out of this show, I say chat with us. The community's small. This is your opportunity. Talk to the host, and he will respond to you. That's the gist of it, right? So, how's everybody doing tonight? Alias, I need to shave. I know I'm looking a little rough. If I don't get a haircut and trim up a little bit, y'all gonna start thinking I got another kid on the way, and I don't. So, not to be sloppy, that's not how I want to play it. So, Alias, welcome to the show. Top of the evening to all of you. Blaine, next is the top of the evening next to the bottom of the morning. I don't know. How linear are we doing this? Maybe if we're reading this like it's a Japanese manga, Blaine. MR's in the chat. How's it going, sir? Texan Italian. Here he is. And MR said, whenever you tell us your credit information, we here in Zimbabwe will always safeguard it. Sorry, caffeinated. Long live the beard. The beard is staying. I'm not saying the beard's going. I need to shave that stuff down there. I like it looking clean here down. And I am long overdue a haircut. I don't like it being long. Thing the military taught me is that high and tight is nice and clean and very low maintenance. Looks professional. I like it. So, with that said, we're talking about Ezra tonight. Reminder, there's not going to be a stream tomorrow. I have my monthly meeting with my good fellow congregants and church leaders. Finally started. Yeah, Veritax tax started. I went to put the kids down to bed, which I knew was going to be a little bit later than normal. So I started, but then I come down and I was like, how did this take so long? How did this end up taking so long? Kids, man. But hey, if you're going to waste time with your kids. You don't get, as I am reminded each and every year, as my son is very close to turning 10 years old, you can't possibly appreciate how fast kids grow up until you've had them. When your parents get all misty-eyed and nostalgic about things, it is very real. It is very real. But look, 10 years, when it hits 10 years, it's going to mark the 10 best years of my life. 10 best years of my life, being a dad, being a husband and a dad at the same time. It's great. It's very fulfilling, and it's only gotten more fulfilling over the years as me and my wife have grown in our marriage, and we have had more kids. And now having 3 and doing the baby thing all over again, it's kind of a reminder of where it all started. So, but it is bothersome. My kid, I'm gonna be almost 60 when my kid graduates from high school. When my last kid graduates from high school. But man, best thing ever. Best thing ever. And listening to Nick's stream about kids, that's nightmare fuel. And we had a friend of ours earlier tell us that one of their kids is going through some very serious health issues right now, and it's just the kind of thing that every parent hates to think about. Young kids getting sick, having to deal with great obstacles, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't even, there's no legal system to fight. There's no machine. There's nothing physical that you can do. You can't even go outside the law and take matters into your own hands. There isn't that. Disease is disease. And it's stressful, and you feel absolutely helpless. Vertax, it's not the kids, it's our perception of time. Look, you guys are the audience. Got to go shave my head soon, too. I look like a dang hippie. Get it done. Get it done, buddy. All right. We're going to close out on Ezra tonight, and we have got some. We're going to start off, like I said, and think pretty spicy. We're going to talk about intermarriage. Not interracial marriage. This is more intertribal marriage, interculture marriage. But there is a great deal of potential fireworks that can come out of this. We live in a I grew up in a point of America where it felt like we were finally getting away from um, racism, real and perceived. It felt like um, kids were able to grow up without being continually reminded about what color they were, what race they were. You would talk about history in more of an abstract sense, but you didn't project that onto the people around you. And I don't know if that's the case today with kids, but it certainly feels like there is an effort from folks to push that kind of idea that maybe you should be looking at your fellow your peers with distrust, that maybe they do have something that they owe you by just the simple fact that they were the simple circumstances of their birth, or vice versa, that you are less than somebody else, that you owe somebody, that you should feel guilt over who you are when you haven't done anything yourself, that somebody hundreds of years ago did something wrong and that you are paying the price for that. It's been a very weird almost 20 years. Well, yeah. It's been a very weird 15 years. Let's call it that. A very weird 15 years where it just seems like all this stuff that we have gotten past has been dredged up again. And by folks dredging it up, they have caused more people to run to their tribes, so to speak, run to their races and hold fast to it. People don't like being told. People who grew up okay with everybody don't like being told that they are bad and evil for being what they haven't been. And that's a difficult thing to do culture wide. And now we're really seeing it worldwide. There are some cultures that just don't care. China does not care. First kid I remember playing with as a kid was the son of my dad's coworker. Black kid. Never thought anything of it. Never thought anything of it. And his older brother, astronaut, right? I mean, it's in dad worked with this gentleman for a long time, and they had a very good friendship. And he was very proud of what his sons were able to accomplish. I remember my dad when I was in high school, when his older brother became an astronaut, had his picture in there with him, because he was proud to say, "Hey, I'm friends with that guy's dad, a man who raised that dude." And his accomplishments should be celebrated. But and my family's been here since Jamestown. It's since the 1600s, so long before the 1619 and all that other stuff. They've been here, so we've got a long history of that kind of dubious behavior. Welcome, Dresden. How's it going? Hopefully the beard is long enough that you don't feel weirded out anymore. Go back here a bit. Veritex, my son at 18 months, had to have heart surgery just a few weeks ago. Just a few weeks ago, I took my daughter for evaluation. She was given penicillin, finished the course. She had a reaction. I had a reaction to, can't remember. There's one out there that I had a bad reaction to. I definitely grew up in a race just wasn't a factor in anything we did or thought. It really wasn't. There were other biases. If your granddaddy didn't get married there, you were treated like an outsider, but it had nothing to do with race. Yeah. Where you were from, that was very similar to mine. Yeah, there were outside factors. I'm in, just outside of Richmond. Like I said, there is still a very Confederate feel to things, or there used to be. Now that they've taken all the monuments down, there is no racism. They defeated it fully, but they still talk about it. I almost feel like they're a bunch of kids that had these heroes from the 60s and they want to be like them fighting the same battles. But it feels like instead where they could take a stand on something that they're just trying to recreate what happened in the 60s. Yeah, much was defeated. Not saying everything was solved. Not everything was solved. Many leaps and bounds were accomplished during the civil rights era. And a lot of those monsters were defeated. Some of the biggest ones were. And some of the other more insidious ones that they didn't even know were bad, they still don't know are bad. I am a I am a huge proponent that welfare holds people down much more than it intends to lift people up. And I think there are quotes from Lyndon Johnson that show you exactly why it was put into place in the beginning. From the beginning, the war on poverty has been has done nothing to solve poverty in America, or at least the perceived existence of poverty in America, which is a completely different thing when you consider poverty in literally any third world country. We have no idea how good we have it just by existing in America. And yeah, you might grow up with nothing, and maybe what happens worse, what's worse than growing up poor is growing up with parents who are abusive, for whether you are rich, middle class, or poor. And I am often the person who says, when they bring up child hunger in America, my first question is, what are the parents or guardians doing? Because there are a million programs out there between what the government provides and what private charities provide that there is no reason any kid should be going hungry. My kids' bellies will be full before mine is fed. So what's going on when I hear about that? Going off on a tangent here. All this started because I'm kind of talking about what Ezra's about to discuss about intermarriage and how some people perceive it. I'm not throwing some people up as a straw man, but people interpret things different ways. Some people interpret it that you shouldn't marry outside your race. Some people interpret it as you shouldn't marry an unbeliever. There is further scriptural evidence that that's the case when you listen to Paul talking about being unequally yoked, which I have been rightfully ratioed about disagreeing with on Twitter. And but that's because when me and my wife got married, she wasn't a believer. And we beat the odds. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't have brought her to Christ sooner or made that a requirement, because the lack of faith does more probably to bring somebody down in most cases than it does bring belief to the person. And we have seen that kind of behavior throughout the Old Testament so far. We were talking about it last night with the Midianites and Phineas. So we were talking about the Israelites in Shittim, and they are fraternizing with the Midianites. And they don't say, hey, we brought Midianites in to believe in God. to follow um, the God of Israel, what we see is Israel fall away. The temptation to go uh, go follow the other gods because they're more fun. They're going to give you what you want. They're going to be tempting instead of drawing you towards righteousness. And what Ezra is talking about, I think, tonight is really more about that. Is I won't start off with any questions, but let's just get into it and discuss how this ends up looking. And maybe try to figure out what did he mean by this, as the meme goes. All right. So we are going to close out Ezra tonight, and we are going to start Nehemiah next week. But let's get into this. Let's get into chapter 9 and find out what Ezra's going to be speaking about. After these things had been done, the leaders came to me and said, "The people of Israel, including the priests and the Levites, have not kept themselves separate from the neighboring peoples with their detestable practices. Like those of the Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Jebusites, Ammonites, Moabites, Egyptians, and Amorites, they have taken some of their daughters as wives for themselves, and their sons have mingled the holy race with the peoples around them, and the leaders and officials have led the way in this unfaithfulness." When I heard this, I tore my tunic and cloak, pulled hair from my head and beard, and sat down appalled. Then everyone who trembled at the words of the God of Israel gathered around me because of this unfaithfulness of the exiles. And I sat there appalled until the evening sacrifice. Okay, so let's start off with the beginning. All right, tribal leaders come up. This is the exiles coming back. We are well into the return from exile. The people of Israel, even the priests and Levites, so the people who are supposed to be keeping the law the most, have not kept themselves separate from the neighboring peoples and that with their detestable practices. With their detestable practices, that's your key word there. All right, because if we're going to go back, and a lot of progressive um, Christians, a lot of deconstructed Christians will point to Ezra and say Ezra is problematic. In fact, I remember this. It was a gay preacher, a lesbian preacher, saying that Ezra and Nehemiah needed to be taken out of the Bible because of how problematic they were. I love how they use problematic as that's your warning, right? That's the buzzword that's your warning. Um, let's see, is it here? There's Jacob and Esau. Jacob takes Esau's blessing. All right, we're gonna go all the way. Problematic equals can't be friends. Yeah. Um. Let's see. So we're back in Genesis. We're talking about Jacob and Esau, two brothers, right? Esau, they're twins. They're twins. Esau is the eldest, should be the heir, right? But let's see. Where is... When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite. And also Basemoth, where I call base math, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Esau ends up becoming the father of the Edomites, and they end up being kind of like a pseudo-Israelite group. They kind of see themselves as cousins to the Israelites, but they don't worship God, not the way we think. And what we see from Esau is an inability to listen and obey the commands of his parents. They told him specifically not to do this, and yet he did it. And what we see him doing is taking for granted the blessings that he has until it's too late. Esau wasn't necessarily a bad guy, but he was a disobedient guy. And what we've learned so much from the Old Testament is obedience is very important for righteousness. The lack of obedience is why Christ had to get on that cross. It wasn't because people didn't have faith in the Lord or didn't believe in God. There were many believers in God during that time. There were many Jews that believed in God. The Pharisees believed in God. The Sadducees believed in God, kind of. Sadducees were weird. The general populace of Jews in Roman occupation believed in God. But it's the obedience part. Veritex. I wonder part of this is because of the Samaritans, or what would later become known as the Samaritans, and the Gentiles in general. What it ends up becoming because of, God is setting these folks aside. I am establishing a covenant with you guys, right? And that means I'm going to bless you specifically. We don't know what's going on because this is still Jacob that we're talking about. We don't know what the Canaanites are doing, or the Jebusites, the Hivites, and all these other folks. But whatever it is that they did in that promised land, it was so detestable to God that he wanted them, not only was kicking them out, spitting them out of the land to replace them with the Israelites, he was telling the Israelites to hunt them down and exterminate them. And their gods, their worship, their practices were all detestable. They were all abhorrent. MR, was a conversion possible back then? I'd imagine so, or was it more ethnically based? It was mostly ethnically based, but there is, if we go into the Exodus, there is talk about bringing the outsider in, having them circumcised, having them live by the rules, by the law. But I think there was physical blessings like land and titles that may be denied from them. That's a good question. That's a good topic to dive deeper into. But there is mention within the Mosaic law about the foreigner living among you who is basically observing all the same rules and regulations that you are as an Israelite. So, but at the time that Christ arrives, the Gentiles are rejected wholesale, and maybe some of this has to do with what Ezra writes, but I think they missed the point on why Ezra thought that this was so important. Blaine said, "Wasn't that the whole thing with the bros who say get circumcised then murder the whole family?" Oh, you mean Jacob's sons? Um, no, that wasn't, but that did happen, and that was what they said. It's like, oh well, if you want to marry or if you want to marry our sister, you got to be one of us, right? And that means you got to get circumcised, but not just you. Everybody, all the fighting aged men, oh, they need to get circumcised as well. And while they were all moaning and groaning over, cutting their foreskin off, they came in there and stabbed them all, murdered them, straight up murdered them. But what we see, God doesn't give commands without having a reason behind it. And God understands that, look, I have set this tribe aside. That wasn't Jacob. That was his sons. That was two of his sons. Look, all right, so let's go here since this is funny. And this is something else that we've discussed before. Crap, where is it? Dinah and the Shechemites. So Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk to Jacob after his son raped Jacob's daughter. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they heard what happened. They were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to him, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us." And so that's when they put the what's the word? That's when they made their deal. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. And then got their sister back. It's the interesting part at the end. Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces and attack me and my household, I'm sorry, if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" Like, I get it that they're not going to like what we did, but we don't like what they did. And it kind of ends, it doesn't end with the Bible, doesn't end with God really siding with either side. It's kind of I'm shocked it was just two. Maybe they were the ones that took credit for it. I don't know. I don't think it was a city so much as it was probably a large homestead, right? What's the shocking part is that the guy Shechem was able to and his dad were able to convince all the other males to do it. It's like, "Hey, I want to marry this woman, but she's not allowed to marry me unless I cut my foreskin off." And they're like, "Oh, bro, man, that's a big deal. But I guess if you really love her, I mean, that's a big step." And I guess your dad's very very much behind this as well because he's going to do it too. Well, there's more to this than that. You guys also have to cut your foreskin off. What? No, no, thanks, son. I will politely pass. All right, I'm not getting married to this woman. I'm not getting any of the benefits from this at all. Somehow, um, they did it. And imagine being that in pain after you did this and then getting killed afterwards. Maybe they're happy. Just freaking kill me, bro. Because this isn't a kid. Look, nobody who was circumcised as a child, I know because I'm one of them. No one who was circumcised as a baby remembers being circumcised. But there are full grown men out there who get circumcised, and that has to suck. That sucks. But I guess, look, your commitment, you do that to my sister, there's a reason prison has so much security. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me. Circumcision, the original give an inch, they take a mile. No, it's 10% off the top. That's the joke, right? We're way off topic. All right. But here's another thing. Circumcision, a means of separating yourself and showing your commitment to God and the fact that you are one of his people. You are being uh, circumcised. And when we get into Exodus, when the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come make us gods who will go before us." These are people so easily tempted that the mere absence of Moses for a few days causes them to fall into worship of false gods. If you do this for me, I'll owe you big. An intern on the Opie and Anthony show got it done when he was like 25 and described it as excruciating. I mean, does it take much imagination for that? When we are in Judges, let's see. Here we go. So Joshua's generation, after they go into the promised land, is a righteous generation by all accounts, specifically the Bible accounts. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, after they were all gone, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. Then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed and worshiped various gods of the peoples around them. This is why God is talking about. This is why the gods are punishing the Canaanites for their actions. But he's also he wants them driven out because he knows if he allows them to continue, this is going to happen. And it never ends. It never stops throughout. The temptation is there. And if you're looking for a more recent example, King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter: Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israels, "You must not intermarry with them." Here we go. This is God giving the reason. You must not intermarry with them because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. Right. That's pretty explicitly not racial though. It's about belief and dedication, etc. Right. Back then, much of your belief system was directly tied to your ethnicity. If you're a Sidonian, if you're whoever, you're following these people. Apparently that's not as strict for the Israelites because they didn't hold so tightly to God. But again, these are folks who have been grown up in this culture, have not forsaken their ways, and have said, "Oh yeah, let's get married. Let's start a family. I don't believe what you believe. You don't believe what I believe. So let's just agree to disagree." It's not ever how it works. Whataburger hadn't been created yet. That's not until the New Testament, Serranos. Yeah, exactly. That makes total sense. They were isolated from one another because desert's scary. It was just, I mean, it's just a different time. This is back when the covenant existed between God and the Israelites, God and Abraham and his family and his line going through David, right? Right? When Jesus comes, you realize that there is more to salvation than just your ethnicity. It is about your faith. And so much of much of what Ezra is talking about is valid. And what he's talking about here has a different angle on it because of how the world is now. It's not about the color of your skin or your genealogy. What it is about is what your belief is. And so what he's talking about is maybe don't maybe a Christian shouldn't marry a um, Buddhist. Maybe a Christian shouldn't marry a Hindu or someone who believes in Native American spirits or Muslims or insert anything else, Zoroastrianism or pay. I'm a witch. Don't marry those folks. They will lead your heart astray. If they want to give up their God and their religion and come to Christ, then they're a Christian. Now y'all are living with just Christian influence. And that's where we go out to Paul talking about being unequally yoked. The burden of righteousness is going to be more fully felt by you. Or just the weirdos who are far more superstitious than me, but are atheists. Exactly. Oh, you met her. So, let's go more. So now we kind of have a better understanding of what Ezra is discussing here. And they're named here Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, like those of have not kept them separate from the neighboring people with their detestable practices. And the leaders and officials have led the way in this unfaithlessness. So he is upset. He's like, look, doing this is the same crap that got us in trouble in the first place. It's the same issues. It's the same behavior. And it all starts with not being true to what God instructs us to. Then at the evening sacrifice, I rose from my self abasement with my tunic and cloak torn and fell on my knees with my hands spread out to the Lord my God and prayed. I am too ashamed and disgraced, my God, to live up to restart. I am too ashamed and disgraced, my God, to lift up my face to you, because our sins are higher than our heads and our guilt has reached to the heavens. From the days of our ancestors until now, our guilt has been great. Because of our sins, we and our kings and our priests have been subjected to the sword in captivity, to pillage and humiliation at the hands of foreign kings, as it is today. But now, for a brief moment, the Lord our God has been gracious in leaving us a remnant and giving us a firm place in his sanctuary, so that our God gives light to our eyes and a little relief in our bondage. Though we are slaves, our God has not forsaken us in our bondage. He has shown us kindness in the sight of the kings of Persia. He has granted us a new life to rebuild the house of our God and repair its ruins. And he has given us a wall of protection in Judah and Jerusalem. But now, our God, what can we say after this? For we have forsaken the commands you gave through your servants, the prophets, when you said, and this is going back to the Exodus. The land you are entering to possess is a land polluted by the corruption of its peoples. By their detestable practices, they have filled it with their impurity from one end to the other. He doesn't say anything about them being impure because of who they are, about their racial or genetic makeup. What he identifies them by their detestable practices, they have filled it with their impurity from one end to the other. Therefore, because of that, do not give your daughters in marriage to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons. Do not seek a treaty of friendship with them at any time, that you may be strong and eat the good things of the land and leave it to your children as an everlasting inheritance. Guys, it might be more important to be watchful of yoking ourselves, not just to folks who are atheists or agnostics or of other religions, but deconstructed Christians, folks who believe that the Bible is an error on things, people who ignore commands of the Bible and say, well, that's just wrong. Because that stuff, if you can't convince them otherwise, they're going to bring you down as well. Because that's how the house falls. If the foundation is not a solid foundation of belief in God and his perfection and the inerrancy of scripture, because the word is God and the word is Christ and the word is what we have and it's been there since the beginning, those things aren't recognized. Your house is built upon the sand. That's another one we'll get into later. What has happened to us as a result of our evil deeds and our great guilt And yet, our God, you have punished us less than our sins deserved and have given us a remnant like this. Shall we then break your commands again and intermarry with the peoples who commit such detestable practices? Would you not be angry enough with us to destroy us, leaving us no remnant or survivor? Lord, the God of Israel, you are righteous. We are left this day as a remnant. Here, he likes to use that word a lot, at least in this translation. Here we are before you in our guilt, though because of it, not one of us can stand in your presence. All fall short before the glory of God. I believe in all 7 commandments. I believe in all 10 commandments. That's what it normally is. That's what it normally is. There's a guy on Twitter, Philip Dorita. I follow him, and he has a series of commentaries that he has drawn out where somebody says, "Oh, I believe in all this stuff, but," and he goes into all the mental gymnastics that they go through to explain why they don't actually believe what they say they believe. It's very funny. At least I find it. It's my kind of humor. I don't know if relevant, but all my teenage friends who are atheists are miserable, and I was never an unbeliever, but at the time I wasn't great. And I wonder how much of it has to do with it. It's an interesting There's interesting points that you make because this is a place that I land on them. Back when you were a teenager, I get that, MR. I figure you probably weren't a teenage lawyer or just hanging out with teenagers. One would make you a genius, the other would make you a weirdo. But if you look at people who are atheists, it really feels to me like the sheer lack of faith has put such makes them seem like a shell of themselves. Like any joy that they're genuine that they think that they genuinely are having is only on the surface, and that beneath that there is still emptiness. There's nothing left inside. There's no faith. There's no belief because every at that point it's just like what you just experienced is gone now, right? I feel like oftentimes that lack of faith and that lack of belief just rots a person from the inside out. You said, and you were never an unbeliever, but at the time you weren't great. That was me as a teenager. Got better in my late teens, 18 to 20. I was getting better. 21 to 26 wasn't doing very good at all. I was doing a lot of bad things. I did things then I regret to this day. Honestly, what started bringing me more started reminding me of what I believed in and why I had been taking it seriously was watching Duck Dynasty. And I know that sounds really, really shallow, but I saw these people who are in a setting not all that different from how I grew up, with a belief structure, culturally belief structure, not a religious belief structure, that I held to and I thought was right. But it's been spent so much time worrying that other people thought it was dumb. And then that they didn't compromise their values. When Phil Robertson was being attacked for when Phil Robertson was being attacked for his comments about, hey, homosexuality is evil. I love them to death, but what they're doing is wrong. And I really want Hold on. Let's find the exact, because so many people wanted to take it out of context. Let's see. Oh man, they don't want to quote it. Hang on, I might have it here. Here we go. The discussion on homosexuality begins after this line from Robertson. Everything is blurred on what is right and what's wrong, he said. He's talking to GQ. Everything is blurred on what's right and what's wrong, he says. Sin becomes fine. Start with homosexual behavior and just morph out from there. Bestiality, sleeping around with this woman and that woman and those men. Don't be deceived. Neither the adulterers, the idolaters, the male prostitutes, the homosexual offenders, the greedy, the drunkards, the slanderers, the swindlers, they won't inherit the kingdom of God. He's quoting the Bible right there. Don't deceive yourselves. It's not right. And here's where he followed it up. We never ever judge someone on who's going to heaven. That's the Almighty's job. We just love them. Give them the good news about Jesus, whether they're homosexuals, drunks, or terrorists. We let God sort them out later. You see what I'm saying? Basing itself on the same principles. Wait, that's nothing. That's something else. Just love them and give them the good news about Jesus. Right? He stood by that. They tried firing him from the show, and he was willing because they told him to go back on it. He said, "I'm not." And at the time, my wife, because I'm still not in church at the time. It's funny how he threw terrorists in there. Yeah, this is 2013 when he made these comments. I think. No, I think it's earlier than that. Anyway, wife comes up to me and she's like, "Why doesn't he just say it?" I was like, "I think his views are a little extreme." I was like, "You might think they're extreme." So before my wife had become a Christian, you might think those views are extreme, but that's exactly what I believe. It's exactly what I believe. And we had already been watching the show a little bit, but I started watching it with renewed interest. And I had a kid on the way, and it really started to remind me this 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 idea of family, this idea of faith, this idea of God is incredibly important. And I understand that and I recognize that and I need to try to do better and emulate that. But I need to make sure my kids understand that as well. And I'm sure I will be influencing them, but I need help. I need help. And that was before I realized I also needed help as well, more help as well. Or maybe I realized I need more help, but I didn't think I could get it from church. And I found a good church, a good congregation, and a good preacher. Started getting things out of sermons, and not just that, getting things out of fellowship with other Christians who took things seriously. take faith seriously, take fellowship seriously, and they're not worried about who is who donates the most to the church, who was a founding member, or any of that. They don't care about what how will this look to us. They weren't Phil Robertsons. But then you go to a church where there are people like Phil Robertson there. Humble, quiet. He doesn't speak a whole lot. When he does, he talks he does, but generally serious. And he says things that he means. It was such a good show. It was the only good thing that ever came out of reality TV. And I thought it was just a bunch of hicks at first. And I thought maybe it was kind of like Here Comes Honey Boo Boo, where we're just making fun of it. But then when I watched it, I realized how much is there. So I might be corny and say, hey, it was a great show. I loved it and I got a lot out of it. Duck Dynasty was reality. Oh, look, you can tell a lot of the circumstances are contrived, but what you see from them, unless you're being sarcastic, but what you see from them and what they said, those things reflected their true beliefs and true true personalities. In fact, A&E encouraged them to curse, which they don't do. Encourage them to curse, and they wouldn't, to the point that A&E um inserted bleeps into the dialogue to make it look like they're cursing. And the Robertson family came back and said, if you keep doing that, show's over. We're not going to be portrayed in a way that we're not. But a lot of the things, a lot of the shenanigans, you can tell the stuff that they're getting into is contrived. No, it wasn't a sitcom. It was a reality TV. If you haven't watched it and you can go and see that, I highly recommend watching it. It is wholesome distilled. You think gay people are going to hell? Quote, unquote. I don't know what is that from the GQ article? Oh, yeah. I think a lot more than that are going to hell. Yeah. No, but MR, I mean, I highly recommend getting into it. It was a long running show. There was a reason why it had such a good following within the conservative movement. If it was just making fun of people, then it would be something very different. I don't know. Oh, that was a talk about your friends and the lack of um fulfillment and how empty you felt like they felt. And Alias said, "Is it really a lack of faith more in the contrary?" Or is it really a lack of faith or more of the contrary? Don't know, Alias. I don't get into the hearts of other people. I don't, and like I said, that's really in a place where that's in a place where I've never traveled. I've never not believed in God. And I'm not saying that to put myself on a pedestal. I think people who have not believed and or grown up in a place where they were not encouraged and came to the faith as adults, much more serious and overcame more than I did. I was lucky. I didn't tell my parents, take me to church. My parents brought me to church, took me to church a lot of times when I didn't want to go because it was boring. I'd rather stay home, play with my toys. I'd sit there and draw during the sermons because I needed something to do. But what I didn't understand and appreciate at the time was that I was picking things up in Sunday school. And while I was drawing during the sermons, my ADHD, I'm listening to the whole thing and I'm absorbing it. It was deeply, deeply helpful. So, I was blessed. And I don't know if I'm raised in another culture, if I'm raised in another household with some hippie atheists out there, or some quote unquote witches selling their essential oils um and their blessed be stickers, bumper stickers, the coexist stuff. Um, I don't know if I come to God. I don't know. I can't perseverate on it though, because I didn't. But I do appreciate the hell out of people who come to it. I got a buddy. He's only known him for the last about a year, but he's very serious about his faith, and he didn't up until, I mean, like 10 years ago. He didn't believe at all, but he was in a very bad place. He felt like he was at rock bottom, and he was just he just reaches out and said, I need a sign." And literally as soon as he did that, he looked to the right and there was a sign to Gethsemane Church not that far from where I grew up. He pulls in there and he just breaks down listening to the sermon. Meets his wife, has a couple of kids, my kid's age. And man, when I tell you, he is a guy who is firm in speaking the word, that's this man. He's commented on here. He'll sometimes listen to this show. Deep respect from me to him about how he came to God. He wasn't being dragged to church. He didn't believe at all. He was doing whatever he wanted to. But even not believing at all, and you'll see this a lot of times, MR, in response to what you're saying, a lot of times in desperation and emptiness, you reach out in that desperation. And if you're willing to listen, I guarantee you that God's going to speak to you. And I think that that's why so many people end up coming to God, when they're really honest about things. So, the people's confession of sin. So we've got a lot going on. To pull this back in, to make this more into, or to rein this back towards what we're talking about in Scripture. The folks have sinned. Ezra is upset about this, and he is praying to God about it. Not necessarily praying, God, give me a sign. God, I want this. He is repenting. He is remorseful. He is sorry. He is apologizing on behalf of his people. I don't know what to do here. Why do we screw up the way we do? And how many times have you said that in your prayers? I don't know why I keep doing X thing. What's going on, Mr. Evening Star? Why do I keep screwing up? Why do I keep abasing myself? Why do I keep giving in to things? You lack discipline. We were playing softball last night. And I like to say, look, I said church softball, it's slow pitch. It's a game of temptation. Every ball getting thrown there, you want to swing at it. because they're all slowly pitched softballs. And they all look, and a softball is larger, and you've got a metal bat. And you can yeet that ball into the next county, it feels like. As a man holding a bat and watching a ball, slow pitch softball heading to you, you feel like you can do anything. I can take on the whole damn world with this thing. But a lot of times, because look, most of the time you don't have a professional pitcher pitching to you. So the ball, while it's coming in slow and looking easy to hit, might be too high. What oftentimes is too low. And that was happened last night. You swing and miss, or you're not going to be able to hit it the way you need to hit it. The pitcher last night for the other team, they were all falling short of the plate. You want to swing. You don't want to walk. Especially us as a team, we preach, don't take the walk, because we understand that another pitcher is struggling. You want to put the ball in play. Plus, that's the whole point. We're here to hit. Yeah, it's nice to make a play, to make a catch, and turn a double play or doing it. Look, the reason we're playing this game is to hit. That's why you go to batting practice. People go to the batting cages. They don't go to the fielding cages. But you can't swing at something you're not going to get any good piece of. And that's what they kept on doing. And I kept on telling her. I noticed it from the beginning because I watched them warming up, and I was like, guys, pick your spots, pick your pitches, because this guy is having problems getting this ball across the plate. And Serrano's, he wasn't. He would walk. If you had watched him pitch, he should be walking batters with some frequency. He would every 3 pitches, every 3 to 4 pitches, he might lob a good ball in there. You can that's the one you want to wait for. But if not, just take the walk. Make him pitch at least to the point where you're not going to have to bend over to swing. And we kept on doing it. I was so angry, and they gave me so much grief when I walked, and I'm the coach. But that's the thing. Softball's a game of temptation. It looks so easy. It's so easy to just give in. So easy to just give in. If you're just patient and disciplined, you end up with a more fulfilling experience in life. And I think a lot of y'all realize this after you're doing something that you know is sinful, because I know I do this. Do something you know it's sinful. You might feel good while you're doing it. It's drinking, fornicating, if you're committing adultery, or giving into addiction, committing sins. Might feel good, or you might feel cool while you're doing it. But once it's over, once that high is gone, once that good feeling is gone, what's left? Do you feel good about yourself? No. That's why. It's not that fulfilling. Whereas a good deed done, being disciplined and obedient, feels so much better. And you don't feel anything on the back end other than accomplishment and fulfillment, because you did what was right. The people's confession of sin. While Ezra was praying and confessing, weeping and throwing himself down before the house of God, a large crowd of Israelites, men, women, and children, gathered around him. They too wept bitterly. Israelites do fall for a good influence, or bad influence, but in this case, it's a good influence. Then Shechaniah, son of Jehiel, one of the descendants of Elam, said to Ezra, "We have been unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign women from the peoples around us. But in spite of this, there is still hope for Israel. Now let us make a covenant before our God to send away all these women and their children. Oh my goodness. This sounds like there might be an ulterior motive in here. Now let us make a covenant before our God to send away all these women and their children in accordance with the counsel of my Lord and of those who fear the Lord, the commands of our God. Let it be done according to the law. Rise up. This matter is in your hands. We will support you. So take courage and do it. They belong to the streets. So Ezra rose up and put the leading priests and Levites and all Israel under oath to do what had been suggested. And they took the oath. Then Ezra withdrew from before the house of God and went to the room of Johanan, son of Eliashib. While he was there, he ate no food and drank no water because he continued to mourn over the unfaithfulness of the exiles. A proclamation was then issued throughout Judah and Jerusalem for all the exiles to assemble in Jerusalem. Anyone who failed to appear within 3 days would forfeit all his property in accordance with the decision of the officials and elders and would himself be expelled from the assembly of the exiles. Exiled from the exiles. Within the 3 days, all the men of Judah and Benjamin had gathered in Jerusalem. And on the 20th day of the 9th month, all the people were sitting in the square before the house of God, greatly distressed by the occasion and because of the rain. So it wasn't the rains down in Africa. This is the rains down in the Middle East. Then Ezra the priest stood up and said to them, "You have been unfaithful. You have married foreign women, adding to Israel's guilt. Now honor the Lord, the God of your ancestors, and do his will. Separate yourselves from the peoples around you and from your foreign wives." The whole assembly responded with a loud voice, "You are right. We must do as you say. But there are many people here, and it is the rainy season, so we cannot stand outside." Like, always complaining. Besides, this matter cannot be taken care of in a day or two because we have sinned greatly in this thing. Let our officials act for the whole assembly. Then let everyone in our towns who has married a foreign woman come at a set time along with the elders and judges of each town until the fierce anger of our God in this matter is turned away from us. Only Jonathan, son of Shahel, and Jahaziah, son of Tikva, supported by Meshullam and Shabbethai, the Levite, opposed this. So the exiles did as was proposed. Ezra the priest selected men who were family heads, one from each family division, and all of them designated by name. On the first day of the 10th month, they sat down to investigate the cases, and by the first day of the first month, they had finished dealing with all the men who had married foreign women. Okay. So there's some cruel sounding language here. And it all has to do with, now let's make a covenant before our God to send away all these women and children. We've talked about in many spaces the importance of the family unit. The importance of a family unit is founded on God belief, because it's God and then family. What we see here are families established where that's not the case. And we don't know, because it sounds like there's an investigation. We don't know if this is something where, yes, my wife is a foreigner, but she has given up all faith to any of that. She observes all of the Mosaic law, and that's what we teach our children. Maybe she's allowed to stay. I don't know. Maybe if they investigate it, go, no, we know this. We know that she does this. She does these things. I'm not sure. Doesn't matter. What makes us feel uncomfortable, what may make us feel what may be upsetting to us, if God commands it, we do it. And if God has commanded it and we have sinned, we make that right. And so that's what they're doing here. And while that one part of the passage is what so many people focus on, who want to talk about how scripture is full of errors and problems and things that were talked about that are okay now for some reason, but nobody's made it okay. Things that are okay now. What do we see here? What is the crux of this issue? That Israel has sinned, that it's sin starting from the top, and it is something specifically forbidden by God. And what are they doing? They're trying to make things right by undoing what they had partaken in. All right, a little bit more and then we're done. Those guilty of intermarriage. Among the descendants of the priests, the following had married foreign women. From the descendants of Joshua, son of Jozadak, and his brothers, Maaseiah, Eleazar, Jerub, and Gedaliah. They all gave their hands in pledge to put away their wives, and for their guilt, they each presented a ram from the flock as a guilt offering. From the descendants of Emer, Hanani and Zebediah. From the descendants of Harim, Maaseiah, Elijah, Shemaiah, Jehiel, and Uzziah. From the descendants of Pashur, Elioenai, Maaseiah, Ishmael, Nethanel, Jozabad, and Elisah. Among the Levites, Jozabad, Shimei, Keliah, that is Kelida, Pethiah, Judah, and Eleazar. You're noticing some familiar names here from the last couple of chapters that we've listed. Remember, these are heads of households that have done these things. That was one of the things that was reported to Ezra at the beginning of our reading tonight in chapter 9. The sin started at the top. From the musicians, Eliashib. Apparently the musicians were pretty good. He only had one guy. From the gatekeepers, Shalom, Telem, and Uri. And among the other Israelites, from the descendants of Parosh, Ramiah, Isaiah, Malchijah, Mijamin, Eleazar, Malchijah, and Benaiah. From the descendants of Elam, Mattaniah, Zechariah, Jehiel, Abdi, Jeremoth, and Elijah. From the descendants of Zatu, Elioenai, Eliashib, Mattaniah, Jeremoth, Zabad, and Aziza. Imagine being memorialized for a mess up for eternity. Imagine being Judas. There's always something worse, right? Imagine being Satan. From the descendants of Bebai. But yeah, I know what you're saying, Memar. Imagine being listed in here. Should have listened to God. Yeah. From the descendants of Bebai, Jehohanan, Hananiah, Zabai, and Athli. From the descendants of Bani, Meshullam, Maluk, Adiah, Jashub, Sheal, and Jeremoth. From the descendants of Pahath Moab, Adnah, Kelal, Benaiah, Maaseiah, Mattaniah, Bezalel, Benui, and Manasseh. From the descendants of Harim, Eleazar, Ishijah, Malchijah, Shemaiah, and Shimeon, Benjamin, Maluk, and Shemariah. From the descendants of Hashum, Mattanai, Matata, Zabad, Eliphet, Jeremiah, Manasseh, and Shimei. From the descendants of Bani, Meadi, Amram, Uiel, Benaiah, Bediah, Kaluhi, Benaiah, Meremoth, Eliashib, Mattaniah, Mattanai, and Jesu. From the descendants of Benui, Shimei, Shelemiah, Nathan, Adiah, Machnabdebai. I can't believe I got that on the first try. Shashai, Shirai, Azarel, Shelemiah, Shemariah, Shalom, Amariah, and Joseph. From the descendants of Nebo, Jael, Mattathiah, Zabad, Sabina, Jaddai, Joel, and Benaiah. All of these had married foreign women, and some of them had children by these wives. Ezra 10:44. When they said and they sent them away with their children. All right. So, alias, my wife is in for a shock when I get home. Honey, got some bad news. What I learned in Bible study. Pack your bags. I don't know your situation, alias, but I will say this. As the husband, don't know if you have kids, but if you've got kids as a father, the family almost the statistics are certainly in your favor that if you were going to church, they will start going to church. It is way more in favor of the husband and the father than it is if the wife or the mother starts going to church. 90% of the time, the family follows. If it's the father, it's like 10% of the time if the mother, and it's even less if it's the kids starting to go. So I just wanted to smoke this plant instead of this other plant, so I'm going to hell. Chad, yes. Look, I don't know. I think that somebody has found scripture, I think, surrounding it, and maybe we can talk about it. I just hate talking about pot because it's such an exhausting topic to discuss. But wine is listed as okay. I don't think it says anything about smoking tobacco or pot. I don't know. I'm going to have to do some more research on that. Jesus' first miracle is turning water into wine. I don't care what anybody tries to argue about that. It's fermented. It's alcoholic. That was his first miracle. It's for a party. MR, there's one passage, I'm sure. As a former expert, I can help. Bro, it's not a drug. It's not even addictive. It's barely a drug. Bro. That's not what we're talking about tonight, though. We are at an hour and a half. And it's been a long day for me, guys. It's been great because you guys are awesome. Thanks, Serranos, for being here. But to you guys, MR, Serranos, alias Mr. Evening Star, Blaine, who is probably streaming right now. Go check his channel out. It's great if you like anime. Or hearing me and him argue about cars. Veritax, Nernath, Dresden, Texan Italian. And those are the guys, right? So those are the folks in the chat. Thank you guys for participating. Thank you guys for contributing. Thank you guys from me. So many stories of this. My youngest is rebelling at this point. I did too at his age. So many of us did. Thank you guys for making things better. We went off on a bunch of tangents. The reason why this show was an hour and a half, which I thought we were gonna zoom right through it, is because people like you guys ask these questions, make these comments, and build the content up. I can't do it on my own. I'm not interesting enough. I'm not creative enough. I'm not any of these things. But when you add you guys into the mix, this is where we get a lot of discussion on things. Stop taking credit for it. You weren't the only one. But yeah, Marm, thank you. Thank you guys. For anybody who wasn't in the chat, just listening, look, I'm just glad you're getting something out of this. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I should say this more when I've got more viewers. Got less viewers going on right now than I did at Pink Time. But like and subscribe and share this with other folks. This really is a cool place to go. I got to recharge my lights. This really is a great environment to be in. I'm glad you guys have found it. I'm glad you guys are getting things out of it. For everybody catching this on the replay, hope to catch you live soon. Guys, no stream tomorrow, like I said at the beginning of the show. But we will be back here on Friday. We're probably going to talk about our government social experiment in the military and in other places with the stupid things that they say and believe. But we'll see what it comes to. In the meantime, everybody, have a very good night and God bless.